Hey, it's J. T. Also known as JT the LA Storyteller. Here are Los Cuentos de Los Angeles. Also known as JT the LA Storyteller Podcast.
Ericka Wiley, I want to thank you greatly for taking the time to speak with yours truly on this installment of JT the LA Storyteller Podcast. You are running in an important nail-biting election, and so you're on the campaign trail. Therefore, your minutes are all accounted for, I can imagine. So I really appreciate you taking a handful of those to catch up with me and the listenership of this show, because I can't wait to get into the details of your campaign for this November.
Well, thank you so much, Jimmy, for having me. As I told you earlier, it's really an honor to be on your show, and I love your platform and really relish the opportunity to speak to you today.
That is music to my ears. And so with that in mind, I want to jump right into things, really, because those who are tuning into this episode are going to know a thing or two about who's in the running. But to be certain, you are Ericka Wiley, and you are running for LA County Superior Court Judge Seat 48. And in March, you actually came in first. You got about 47% of the vote. You were 3 percentage points, or just a little over 3 percentage points away from just taking this thing outrightly this past March. But now you're heading into a runoff election in November with about less than 3 months to go, or something to that effect.
That's right. The primary was, again, like you said, a nail biter. You know, the way that we do elections here in LA County is you never really know on that first night, right? That first night I was kind of downtrodden after the votes came in March 5th. I was like, oh, I'm behind. And it was just really uplifting to see as our more votes came in, and a lot of the mail-in ballots came in, that I came out on top in my 3-person race. I'm very proud of that. And I think that my campaign is one that has really resonated with a lot of the voters in LA County. Who want change, who want public safety, who want our community members who do experience the criminal justice system to have a chance to return to our community and show up better for themselves and for us. And so I'm really proud of the result of the primary.
Yeah. And so as to backtrack for someone who may just be coming into this story now, I want to ask you a little bit about how you first got involved in this election to begin with. I mean, how does one go on to run for a Superior Court judge seat? Tell us a little bit about the sort of beginning and how you've landed in this race just about 2.5 to 3 months out now.
So I've been a deputy public defender my entire career. I started out back in the year 1999, aged myself a little bit, up in Merced County, which is near Yosemite up north. And I actually took that job as a lifelong Angelino because there was a hiring freeze in LA, but this is the work I really wanted to do. So I worked in Merced for a full year, all of 1999. And then 2000 is when the hiring freeze opened up, and I got hired here in LA County. I was just chomping at the bit to get back here because it's where I'm from and all my family was here. So I've been here in LA County since 2000. And actually this month, I think next week it'll be 24 years on July 17th will be my anniversary here with the office. But to answer your question, how I got on this road to wanting to be a judge, it's after so many years of experience, so many years of fighting. Listen, when people hear the job description, public defender, something, pops in their mind. A lot of times it's not a positive thing. So this job is not a popularity contest. It's one where someone's been in the game for as long as I have. It's because they love the work, or they have a mission in the work to help people. And that's who I am. I really have had a mission all my life to help people and help them improve their lives. And, for the majority of the first part of my career, I'd say 2000, when I first started, through about, 2010, 2015 almost, I felt that the greatest work I could do was by standing side by side with an individual client, disproving the myth about the public pretender, right? Someone who's just going to throw you under the bus. I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to be a person who helps you help yourself and advocates on your behalf, despite some bad decisions perhaps on your part. But now I see that things have opened up quite a bit. And what I mean by that is voters and the legislature have realized that the old ways of doing things, locking people up for long sentences for rather minor crimes, has been really ineffective in improving the behavior of individuals, because it doesn't work. It's not a rehabilitation to send someone to a prison without any services for years for a minor crime. And it hasn't worked to improve the safety of those of us out here in the community who want to have not be robbed and not be murdered and have our children be safe. It's not effective to lock people up if there are alternatives to that. And I think that the voters have recognized that. Certainly the recent changes of the law is a reflection of that in California. And so now I see my role, having gained over 20 years of experience, as expanding and being able to apply what I know about what it takes to improve public safety and improve the lives of individuals to the bench, to take that knowledge to the bench and improve the lives of individuals on a larger scale. So that's why I'm running now.
I appreciate so much of what you said, especially because you mentioned this notion or this perception of public defenders as public pretenders.
Mm-hmm.
I remember coming across that phrase many, many years ago in my own life. And I want to ask you a little bit about the perception and why it is that this phrase developed in the first place. This idea that a public defender, someone whose role is defined as defending the public, wherever they may be from, whatever their name may be. Where is it that we went from actually that sort of defined role to this sense that actually most of the time these sort of court-appointed counsel advisors, they are not in it for you and for your actual interest and for justice in your name? When did that begin to develop, or how is it that began to develop?
How did the change begin to happen? Is that what you're asking?
Where did the perception that a public defender is actually a public pretender come from to begin with?
Well, I think there's two things working together. There's just no secret that public defender's office across the country, and with LA County and California counties included, have been notoriously underfunded. And the lawyers in our offices overworked. So, frankly, the public is confronted with a lawyer who they want to help their son, their daughter, themselves, desperately need their help because they can't afford an attorney, who's got 30, 40 other clients. And that's a daunting situation for someone who's like, what about me, right? It's just a reality in our system that the public defender's offices have historically been underfunded, and individual lawyers have high caseloads. I think together with that is something that I mentioned before, the past system of where laws supported mass incarceration and harsher sentences. The combination of an overworked lawyer and a harsh legal system is just a daunting situation for an individual who just really, really wants some sort of help or someone on their side. And so I think that's what people saw and see, frankly. And so it's not a completely undeserved title, but it's something that is manufactured by the circumstances of what our job has been in the past. The third thing is that just like on every job, you've got good ones and bad ones. You've got people that show up and fight, and those that kind of mail it in. That's just the truth about it on every single job. But I have to say that, my colleagues and I who've been in the office for multiple digit years You don't do this for the fame and fortune. You do it because you love it and you want to help people. So I'd say overall, my experience with lawyers in this office is that they're fighters and people who really have the best interests of their community at heart.
Now, in terms of perception versus reality, again, there was this interview that you participated in with none other than Dominique DePrima for KBLA. That was a great interview. I really enjoyed it. And I think that Dominique asked an excellent question, which was also about, once again, the perception of California and Los Angeles County, just everything out here going by the wayside in terms of its sentencing for crimes, in terms of its sort of susceptibility, in terms of how many people can, according to the sort of notion or the dogmatic attitude, how many people can just play the system now and get a free out of jail card and walk away without any consequences. It seems like something that we, or that many of us, define as progress from more harsh sentencing laws in the past. Others view as Los Angeles and California going soft on crime somehow. Yeah. And I want to ask you, as someone who is there, as someone who has spent the last 24 years in the actual courtroom, what is it that's going on in reality? Are Los Angeles and the state of California, in fact, just going soft on crime now and letting everybody walk away without any consequences whatsoever? Because that seems to be this notion that is popularized out there, again, especially during election season.
Absolutely. It's a talking point for a lot of people who are running for a lot of different things, right? The idea that we're going to hell in a handbasket and we're all, out here just waiting to be the next victim. But I'm in the court system every day. I show up in court every day and I defend cases on the highest level. And what I mean by that is the cases that I work with now are some of the most serious. People charged with murder, with abusing children, with violent crime. And California has absolutely not gone soft on crime. It has not. These are still some of the most difficult cases to defend, and some of the clients who are looking at the harshest sentences and that are prosecuted with the most vigor. So it's definitely not going soft on crime. I think what you're referring to and what Dominique referred to is this idea that minor crimes or less serious crimes perhaps are that there's been a change in thinking about how those cases should be approached from a prosecutorial standpoint, which I think is appropriate. I think that there definitely has been a shift in the way that California in Los Angeles County specifically has addressed nonviolent crime, crimes which have as their root cause, things like poverty on the level of homelessness, mental illness, crimes that have as their root cause drug addiction, that there's been a shift in the thinking that the way to address those crimes instead of prison is perhaps community-based solutions, right? Putting people in programs, addressing mental health issues, doing things like diversion, where a person who committed a crime while in the throes of their mental illness, instead of going to prison where they're sitting there mentally ill now in a cage for, a year, 3, 5, instead is required to do basically mental health counseling, to engage in medication compliance, to demonstrate that compliance to the court over a number of years before their case can actually be dismissed, avoiding now some of the consequences which take effect after you've been convicted of a crime, the inability to get a job, the inability to get housing. So I definitely think that the prosecutors and California voters have seen the criminal justice system sort of come 180-degree turn and understanding that we have to get at the root causes, and that cages are not going to cure all of our problems. We're not going to incarcerate ourselves into safety. We have to do something on a bigger scale and address the underlying causes of crime. But absolutely, my caseload has not gotten any easier to defend because the district attorney's office and the cases where I handle and that my colleagues handle, which are some of the most serious ones, are prosecuting those cases vigorously. Absolutely.
So, especially with that in mind, I want to think about the race once again, and I want to talk for a moment about your opponent in this race, Renee Rose, who states that she's got over 30 years of experience supporting crime victims and advocating for crime victims. And so she is a prosecutor who has, at least according to her statements, stood by victims of violent and other serious crimes. And so I want to ask you, what would make you, as a public defender, more fit for this position, for Judge Seat 48 than Renee Rose?
Well, I certainly respect Ms. Rose for the work that she's done. I may have met her once or twice prior to the election that we're both engaged in, the race that we're both engaged in during our course in the office. But we are different and we have different experience. My understanding about Ms. Rose is that she is the deputy in charge of a unit that prosecutes cases involving victims of elder abuse, and that she's been in that position now for, I guess, approaching about 7 years. And so if her position is consistent with how the deputy in charge position is handled in my office, and I believe that it is, it's a non-working position in that she's, sits at a desk and is supervisor and has done that for a number of years. I did that job as well. It's basically a position. It's not a promotion in terms of getting any additional monies, but it's a line attorney position where you supervise other lawyers in a local office or in a local that come under certain kinds of cases. But I wasn't satisfied with that position for very long. I did it for about 3 years as a supervisor, but my focus has been being on the side of the individual, doing the work in court, knowing what's going on in court on a daily basis. I'm a person who learns by doing. So I keep up with the law by doing the law, right? Having decisions being made in individual cases and having to fight against those positions or advocate for those positions, doing my research. And so that's what my work has been over my entire career, other than the times when I worked as a deputy in charge. And it's where my passion is really doing active work daily. And as a result of that, after 30 years in the office, I think that she indicates in some of her campaign materials that she's done about 30 trials. And by contrast, with about 5 less years in practice, I've done over 100, because that's what I do. I'm in court every day advocating on behalf of clients and knowing what's coming into the court and how cases are resolved. I think that gives me an advantage. Like I said, the law changes, our criminal justice changes, even jurors change. In the process of selecting jurors in trial, I've seen a change in the way that people think. This idea that, we really do need to get at the root causes of crime is something that really people in the community and who show up as jurors agree with as a tenet. And I think you only know that when you're in trial, when you're in court every day doing cases. And so I think that's the difference between us, that and frankly, life experience. I was raised by a single mother in South Central Los Angeles, one of 6 children. And so my experience is that the people who I represent and the people who show up in court are people who have been a part of my entire life. It's the community that I'm from. And so I didn't have to get to court to realize that there are underlying causes of crime. People don't just show up in criminal activity, but it's a process. It's something that happens, a deterioration, and getting at the root causes of that is something that I know from both professional and life experience is something that's very important. So I think those are the differences. That and that I'm a lifelong Democrat, and I understand that my opponent has been a Democrat for a very short period of time, though these are nonpartisan races. I think that knowing as much as you can about a candidate, including their political leanings, tells you sort of who they are as people and how they've showed up in the past.
Now, especially on this note, let's think about our voter once again for a moment. And let's think about the voter who is looking around and playing witness to all these changes, just as we said, because attitudes change, because laws change, because systems change. When they come across this interview and such, what do we say when they ask, okay, you've had this life experience, now you sound like an advocate. Does this mean that you'll be an advocate judge or an activist judge, which I think folks are also exhausted by, given the sort of hype around this question?
Absolutely. There's a lot of hype around the question, and I appreciate you asking me that, because I think that it's important that people know that that I'm a reasoned decision maker. I mean, someone who doesn't just believe that, we should be giving away the court, right? I'm a member of this community. I've got a young child. I'm a homeowner. I'm someone who's very interested in public safety. But I'm also someone who has seen over the course of many years what has not worked. As I've told you a number of times during this interview, the cases that I handle are some of the most serious cases that come into the court, right? So I'm someone who knows what it means to have someone who I'm advocating for, who frankly has made decisions repeatedly that put a lot of people in danger. And while I advocate for them in my current position and believe that we definitely need to look at what we can do to keep these people out of the prison system, I certainly do know that in some cases that the threat to public safety cannot be quelled in any other way other than a prison sentence. I mean, that just makes sense, right? In cases of murder or very serious crimes, some people just need to be taken out of the community for some time in order for us to be safe, based upon situations which often are outside of their control. But when you weigh the balance of public safety and what an individual might be going through, perhaps prison is the option. But the bottom line is, over the years that I've been working, I have learned what works, what does not work. And I am a reasoned decision maker who certainly is interested in public safety, and that will come out in my decisions as a judge, just as it would in the case of a prosecutor, right? Because I mean, the default position for many voters in the past has been that prosecutors are the way to go because they're going to make us all safe. Well, what that's done over a number of years has resulted in a system of mass incarceration. So I think that we have to look at different alternatives. And I'm certainly that different alternative, a person with a reasoned decision maker with a different background.
Now, once again, going back to this voter, let's think a little bit about how we've noted that all of this change is before us, but we also understand, or this voter also understands, that sometimes things change too quickly, and sometimes change arrives when systems are not equipped for change. And so I've heard in one or two discussions around the block, let's say, that the system, especially for those who are on the street when they are mentally unstable or mentally unfit to participate in society, that it is just not ready for the sheer volume of people who need it. And I have to ask you a little bit about this, because if we were in the courtroom tomorrow and we have in front of us an individual with serious mental health needs, and we send them off to a system that is also itself not equipped to handle what it is that they require, what then? What good is the judge's seat at that point if the system that the judge is sending people to is actually also underfunded, understaffed, and essentially underperforming as it should for these folks and overall the community and the city and LA County?
Well, thank you for that question. Absolutely. I have to admit that I do find that there is, in one particular area, which deals with not necessarily the unhoused, who I think that you have referenced, people living on the street and making their living on the street. but people who certainly are unhoused and then suffering from mental illness, which is a large population of our unhoused communities. To the extent that you have a person whose mental illness shows up in violence, or absolutely making an individual like yourself or myself, who's just minding our own business on the street, unsafe, because of delusions they're having or things of that nature. There is an absence of sort of available beds for people whose mental illness causes them to show up as unsafe in our community. And that's something that absolutely needs to be worked on. And that I think that our elected officials need to make provisions for in terms of the funding. I find that clients who commit very serious crimes, but do so while actively mentally ill, have the option of being locked in the state hospital or in an unlocked facility. And there are very few alternatives in between that are not prison, but perhaps a secure facility for people where there are beds available. There's a big hole in our system for that. But most of the people who, first of all, the percentage of violent crimes and this notion that most of the crimes that happen in LA County are violent crimes is absolutely false. I think the numbers just don't bear that out. And so there are a lot of mentally ill and unhoused people on the street who might be engaged in criminal activity that would not be considered violent or very serious criminal activity. And our system has done a lot to provide opportunities for these people to get help. I have seen what I would term as an explosion in resources, I'd say in the last at least 5 years, for people who are mentally ill but don't involve themselves in violence. There's a lot of opportunity for helping those people, but the system does need to improve for people whose mental illness causes them to show up in violent ways. And that's about funding. That's not about the application of the law and a desperate need to still provide these people with help, but it's about the lack of resources, which our elected officials need to address.
Right. I mean, what I gathered from what you're saying as well is that there is an upshot, because if you've seen an increase in services available to those are not violent, but who are dealing with real mental health issues, then there's an upshot, because that system was not previously there, not to the extent that was necessary. But now there has been progress on that front. I want to ask you a little bit in terms of services for this demographic, for this part of our community. What have you seen? Do services include housing? Do services include, medication? I mean, what exactly have resources for those who are mentally challenged? What does resourcing them look like today versus what it was yesterday, to be sure?
So yesterday, it was, frankly, the absence of resources. It was get yourself, sir, enrolled in a program, even though you're actively mentally ill and having problems maintaining your daily life. Come back in here in 2 weeks and show us that you found and identified and enrolled in a program. Very unrealistic situation. That's what I've seen in the past. What I see now, I would just show as an example the ODR program, right? That's something that's really been a change maker in our court system. I don't know exactly the year that it came into effect, but it's certainly been in the last several years. And this is a program that identifies individuals in the system who, again, fit that category of mentally ill, but not showing up in a way of extreme violence or unchecked mental illness or untreated mental illness, that have gotten to some level of stability, perhaps in the days that they spend in the county jail, are willing to get treatment. And this is a program that'll put someone who's committed a crime into a what is best termed, I guess, a boarding care facility, a facility with other individuals suffering from the same kind of issues. These individuals engage in groups. There are psychiatrists who meet with them at the facility and encourage and insist on medication compliance. medication compliance is not just your word that you're taking your medication, but perhaps urine tests which identify the medication in your system that you are in compliance. They live in a boarding care where they've got a curfew, where there's good meals and a non-stressful environment, and that they do well in that setting for a number of years. Frankly, it could take up to 2 years for a person to graduate out of that system and to go into now bridge housing, where they're living in their own individual apartment, but they're assisted through funds from the county and getting a lot of those same resources now on an outpatient basis, just wraparound services that address every issue in someone's life, so that we're not just putting a Band-Aid on the issue, but really engaging in a lot of healing over a period of time. And this program has had a lot of success for my clients. It's certainly decreased recidivism for clients who had been going in and out of the system for years. So these are the kind of systems that have now been put in place, not just with that program, but quite a few ones that address the immediate need for community safety and keeping this person out of the prison system, but then also looks at assisting them long term.
I really appreciate your time on these questions, because walking through LA, driving through LA, taking public transportation through LA, one can't help but encounter these kinds of questions at some point, or wonder about these questions at some point. And so I think it's really a matter of fairness to ask a little bit about how we would engage this on a communal level, because so many people are wondering at any given moment in this city.
Absolutely. And what we have to understand as individuals and community members is it's not a crime to be mentally ill, right? It's what you're thinking in your head, or the delusions that you have are certainly unfortunate. And if you're not unmedicated and it's causing you to suffer, that's an unfortunate situation. And so family members are concerned with that, friends are concerned with that on an individual basis. But we as community members become concerned when that behavior infringes on our ability to, lead our daily lives. And so I think that these programs certainly are addressing that for individuals. And it's been a huge relief to see our system recognize that this is something that needs to happen to avoid recidivism, to keep us safe, to help individuals help themselves. Because, the bottom line is that most people who get a prison sentence are not going there for life. They're going there for a time, and they're going to come back to our community. They're community members, right? And so we want, if someone is being punished by the system, for the system to have opportunity and availability for this person to improve their life, so that all of us can live a better life when they come back to our community, because they will come back.
Now, thinking about this race once again, I want to ask you a little bit about the framework here. And the framework I'm thinking about is the Defenders of Justice Slate, through which I first heard of your campaign about, as well as La Defensa. So would you say a little bit about the relation between these two? What are the Defenders of Justice? Who are the Defenders of Justice? And then what is your involvement with La Defensa?
So it's La Defensa is a grassroots organization that has as its mission to essentially improve the legal system in Los Angeles County. And their approach is essentially improving the systems that you and I have talked about, looking at the root causes of incarceration as opposed to prison as the only option for improving public safety in the lives of individuals. So that's really been their mission. And they work in many areas in the LA County criminal justice system. But the way that I am associated with them and they're associated with me is through the Defenders of Justice, which is supported by their political action committee, the La Defensa PAC, Political Action Committee. And what they have done for me and my running mate, George Turner, is provide us with in-kind services. And by that, I mean support for our campaigns in the form of text banking, in the form of canvassing, in the form of assisting us in arranging many of the interviews like you talked about with Dominic Duprima, and getting the word out about who we are, who I am, what I think are my strong points as a judicial candidate and hopefully a future judge. And so their assistance has been immeasurably helpful in my case. And I really am proud to be associated with them because they are a part of the solution.
Now, when you say PAC, which is a political action committee or something of this sort, people every now and again will say, well, that's a group of anonymous donors out there, huge benefactors, maybe even millionaires who just fund campaigns and shape them to their liking. Is this what La Defensa is, or is there a little bit of myth busting that we should do just for the record here?
Well, this is what I can say, that the positive changes in our community, which have come about over the years in many different areas, have been as a result of organizations like La Defensa, people from the community who've identified community problems and come up with community solutions. That's the kind of organization that La Defensa is. My association with them is as a result of a meeting of the minds. In other words, I didn't have to get to La Defensa and they didn't have to get to me to know that we both believe that the way that things have been happening in our criminal justice system has been ineffective, and there needs to be change, and there needs to be an end to mass incarceration, right? So it was a meeting of the minds, which brought me and the organization together. And again, I'm proud of my association with them. And these campaigns require people of like minds to put their resources together to back their candidates. And that's what La Defensa does. And that's what everyone who has a particular position has done. But no one is getting rich, that's for sure. I mean, these are low information races, low funded races, and certainly all of the support that I've had from La Defensa is in-kind services. And what I mean by that is services in assistance to my campaign, but not any cash in assistance to my campaign.
Right. And thinking a little bit about this campaign just once more, you are essentially going through all of LA County because all of LA County is eligible to vote for you. That's almost 10 million people. 18 people under the age of 18 don't vote and such. So we have to trim the numbers a little bit. Undocumented people are also not allowed to vote. I do not believe that people with a felony are able to vote. You might dispel some of that for me for a moment. And so there are a handful of folks out there who cannot vote, but the vast majority of those who reside in any part of Los Angeles County, not just the city of LA, are eligible to vote for you in this race. And actually, just in March, I think I saw typically that around 1 million people showed out just to vote in that primary for one Superior Court judge seat or another and such. So now in November, with a big general election at hand and this presidential contest and such, there are going to be a lot more voters out there, all of whom, if they live in LA County, can vote for your candidacy here.
Absolutely. I think the number of actual registered voters is somewhere just over 5 million in our huge county. And so, yeah, you're right about the numbers there. And unlike, your local council seat or even for candidates for, let's say, state senate have a smaller focus, but the judge race is all of LA County. And it has definitely been, challenge to reach out to and to reach those voters. You absolutely can vote if you have a felony on your record. There's nothing in the law that says that you as a person who's had a past felony conviction can't vote. And it's actually important that people with felony convictions do vote. It's a part of reintegrating in our society. It represents rehabilitation to actively engage in our political systems. Surprisingly, people currently incarcerated can vote. You'd be surprised to learn that there's drop-off ballots, a ballot system that is brought to people who are currently incarcerated and are not on probation and have not been convicted of a crime, but maybe are facing trial and perhaps a case coming up, who do vote and actively voted in our last election here in March. So there are restrictions for voting for people who are on active probation. If you're currently on probation, that would be a restriction to your ability to vote. But a past criminal history just means that you are working to do better in the future, hopefully, and you can certainly vote. And I encourage you to do so. But it's an uphill battle, and I appreciate the opportunity for you getting the word out about myself as a candidate, because I think that people don't know who judges are, right? We're not out there campaigning and spending tons of money. We're individuals who've been living our daily lives and working. I am actively working while I'm engaged in this campaign. I go to work and I show up in court every day. So this has been a lot of work, but it's also been very rewarding to have the kind of support that I've gotten from the community and organizations in our community who are like-minded.
A full-time opportunity on top of your full-time job.
That's right.
Wow. Lots to sift through there. Now, I want to ask you, especially when we think about, that groundwork that's involved, about how voters can get involved. I mean, let's say that someone is tuning into this podcast tomorrow and they want to get involved. They have heard you speak. They are in complete agreement with your position on the issues, and they want to lend a hand. I mean, at this point, are you mostly just accepting monetary donations, or are you accepting volunteer or in-kind services? Tell us a little bit about how folks can get involved with Ericka Wiley's campaign for Superior Court Judge Seat 48 in LA County.
Well, thank you. I do have a website. I certainly would welcome and am accepting monetary donations. My website is Wiley, that's WILEYFOR, judge.com. And if you go on my Instagram, which is Wiley, WILEY, the number 4, judge.com, I regularly update my activities in terms of fundraising and canvassing. And so if you want to assist, certainly follow me on Instagram. We've got a fundraiser coming up at a winery out in Long Beach in the month of August. You get an opportunity to meet me and my running mate, George Turner, in person, have in-person discussions about your concerns, your questions. I love talking to voters and interested people about my campaign, because my campaign is really just an extension of my life and work that I've been doing for my entire life. So it's very easy for me to talk to people about it. But my website and my Instagram, as well as my Facebook, if you Google me, my Facebook will come up. We'll give you opportunities to assist. We'll be doing some canvassing and text banking very close to October, when ballots come out, to get voters to know about us. I mean, frankly, a lot of us have really short attention spans. So the campaigning sort of revs up a lot closer to the November 5th deadline for when we all get in there and vote in person if we haven't mailed in our ballots. So follow me on Instagram and you'll see all of the things that we're doing and the ways that you can contribute.
How exciting, how exciting. And once again, I'm so thankful for the opportunity to speak with you, Ericka Wiley, for Judge on JT the LA Storyteller podcast. And just before we wrap up, I mentioned to you at the outset that I've got a few lightning round questions.
Okay, let's go for it.
We have to get into them. And they're all LA based or about LA. So the first one goes like this. Are you a Lakers or Clippers fan?
Oh my goodness. Lakers. I grew up around the LA Forum where the Lakers used to play back in the day. My dream team was Magic, Kareem, And regardless of how good or bad they've been doing over the years, I'm still a big Lakers fan. I feel like I'm with them.
Okay. Well done. Now, I have to ask you next about whether you are an In-N-Out or McDonald's girl.
Oh my goodness, are you kidding? In-N-Out.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think there's any competition there.
Okay. Very good. Now I have to ask you about your favorite movie based in LA or about LA.
Oh,
You can think about that for a moment. You don't have to know right away.
Boyz N the Hood.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and that one takes you way back, but it was actually filmed in and around the Jefferson Park area of Los Angeles, which is where I spent a good portion of my life because my mom had a home there. So when I see that place, it's very nostalgic because things have changed drastically, but it gives me a sense of home, and it reminds me of things that I saw happening in my community and the struggles that were happening with individuals in my community. So hands down, Boyz N the Hood.
Shout out Boyz N the Hood. Thank you so much for that. And now I have to ask you if you are a fish, shrimp, or carne asada taco girl on Taco Tuesdays.
Carne asada.
There you go.
Yes. I know I love the way you rolled your R's. I was trying to do the same thing of it. I know I came up short there, but yeah, I'd have to say carne asada.
Shout out to you for going for the role. Definitely respect that shot on your part. And lastly, if you are green or red salsa on your tacos, actually.
You know what? I'm going to go down the middle of the road with that. I think it depends on the restaurant and who makes it. In most cases, green, but I can go red.
A wise statement, a wise note on your part for this. Ericka, thank you so much once again for your time on this installment of JT the LA Storyteller podcast. As noted, you can follow Ericka through Instagram or Facebook or wherever it is that you keep up with all things in LA County, especially elections in LA County. And once again, Ericka, I'm excited about this race. I can't wait to hear more. I can't wait to see more. I am following you on the Insta. And actually, I need a screenshot just before we wrap up so that I can get an additional shout out into the mix.
Let me fix my hair. Okay.
Dude. Do it. Okay. Let's see. On 3. 1, 2, and 3. Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much. And I will be in touch, Ericka. I'm wishing you a restful evening. I need you to recharge to the best of your ability because I know.
Yeah, it's been a long week so far.
Okay.
It's Friday, so I won't be working tomorrow, at least not on actual desk work. But thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed talking to you, and your questions have put a lot on my mind that was already there, but certainly caused me to think about a lot of things. And I just would like to tell your listeners, vote no matter what. Vote like your democracy depends on it because it does.
Yes. And also before we wrap, I want to shout out Natasha Kamash just as well, because were it not for her and her outreach, especially at that last minute when she threw her hat into the ring for the write-in campaign, I thought, let me give this a minute. Let me give this just 1 minute. And the outcome being what it may be, I am excited that we got a chance to really think about judging in Los Angeles and who gets to judge me and my peers in Los Angeles. And I'm excited that we got some folks to really participate because just as we were saying at the outset, even though sometimes when folks hear public defenders, these antennas in this sort of negative connotation go off, there are also just as many people who I met in person who, when I said public defender, who can actually make a difference in someone else's life, including someone who you may know, their antennas went up in the absolutely positive direction because they thought, oh, right, a race that I can actually really slightly make a difference about or on. So I'm excited about these seats, and I really do appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, to speak with George, to speak with Natasha Kamashta. All of you all are a great addition to JT, the LA Storyteller podcast.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. And like I said, I really appreciate our conversation and the opportunity to be on your podcast. This was amazing. Thank you.
Hey, it's J. T. also known as JT the LA Storyteller. Here are Los Cuentos de Los Angeles, also known as JT the LA Storyteller Podcast.